My grandmother had been dead for 11 days when a woman I had never met in my life walked into the lawyer's office and told everyone in the room that half of everything belonged to her. If you're new here, welcome to Hidden Justice USA. Comment the city you're watching from, because trust me, by the end of this story, you're going to want to talk about it. My name is Callie Prescott. I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of how one stranger's claim tore my family apart and exposed a secret my parents had buried for almost 30 years. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, the only grandchild of Eleanor Whitfield, a woman everyone in our neighborhood called Miss Ellie. She raised silk plants on her porch, made the best pecan pie in the county, and never once, not one single time, made me feel like anything other than the center of her world. When my parents divorced and money got tight, it was Grandma Ellie who paid for my tuition at Charleston Coastal University. It was Grandma Ellie who sat with me every Sunday after church, teaching me how to balance a checkbook, how to hold my head up, how to never let anyone make me feel small. So when she passed peacefully in her sleep at 83, I wasn't just losing a grandmother. I was losing the one person who had never let me down. The will reading was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at a small law office on King Street. My mother, my Uncle Robert and I sat in stiff leather chairs across from Mr. Halloway, the family attorney who had handled Grandma's affairs for over 20 years. I expected this to be simple. Grandma had told me herself more than once that the house on Rutledge Avenue and her savings would be split between my mother, my uncle, and me. We were 5 minutes into the reading when the office door opened. A woman walked in, maybe 50 years old, dressed simply, with sharp gray eyes that swept the room like she was looking for someone specific. She didn't apologize for interrupting. She didn't sit down. She just looked directly at my mother and said, "I think it's time everyone in this room learned who I am." My mother's face went the color of old paper. Mr. Halloway, visibly caught off guard, asked the woman to identify herself. She said her name was Denise Coyle, and she was Eleanor Whitfield's daughter. The room went dead silent. My Uncle Robert let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Excuse me?" My mother had 2 children, me and my sister. That's it. Denise reached into a folder she was carrying and set 3 documents on the table. A birth certificate, an old photograph of a much younger Eleanor Whitfield holding an infant on the steps of a house I didn't recognize, and a letter. Handwritten, the ink faded but still legible. "Your mother," Denise said quietly, "gave me up when I was 3 days old. 1974. She was 19. Her parents forced her to place me with a family 2 counties over because they didn't want the scandal of an unmarried teenage daughter. She kept my birth certificate. She kept my photograph. And 4 years ago, after a DNA test confirmed what I'd suspected my whole life, she found me." I looked at my mother. Her hands were shaking in her lap, and she would not meet my eyes. "She found you 4 years ago," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "And never told any of us?" Denise nodded. "We had lunch every few months. She called me on my birthday. She told me she was planning to make things right before she passed, that she'd already updated her will to include me, and that she was going to tell the family herself, when the time was right." Denise's composure cracked for just a moment. "She ran out of time." Mr. Halloway cleared his throat and confirmed, with visible discomfort, that an amended will had in fact been filed 8 months earlier, naming Denise Coyle as an equal beneficiary alongside my mother, my uncle, and me. The room exploded. My Uncle Robert stood up so fast his chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "This is insane. This woman walks in here with a piece of paper and expects us to just hand over a quarter of everything our mother worked her whole life for?" "I'm not asking you to hand over anything," Denise said, her voice steady even as her eyes glistened. "I'm telling you what your mother wanted. I didn't ask to be born and given away. I didn't ask to find out at 50 years old that I have a sister and a niece I never got to know. All I wanted, the only thing I ever wanted, was to know where I came from. I sat there, stunned, trying to process the fact that the woman who taught me to hold my head up high had been carrying a secret this enormous, this heavy, for 3 decades, and had never once let it show. But here's the part that really shook me. My mother wasn't crying because she'd lost her mother's secret sister. She was crying because she'd known about Denise for 4 years. And instead of welcoming her, instead of honoring what Grandma Ellie wanted, she and Uncle Robert had spent the last 2 weeks, since the moment Grandma passed, quietly trying to get Mr. Halloway to challenge the amended will's validity. I found out because Mr. Halloway, clearly uncomfortable with being caught in the middle, mentioned it outright. "Your mother and your uncle contacted my office 9 days ago," he said carefully, looking at me, requesting information on contesting the amendment on the grounds of, and I'm quoting the letter here, undue influence and diminished capacity. I turned to my mother, my chest tight with a fury I didn't know I had in me. "You were trying to prove Grandma wasn't in her right mind? The same woman who called me every single Sunday until the week she died? Who did the crossword in ink because she said pencil was for people who doubted themselves?" "Callie, you don't understand," my mother started. "I understand perfectly," I said. "You knew you had a sister. Grandma finally got the chance to make peace with the biggest regret of her life, and your first move after she died was to try and erase that. Not because it was wrong, because it was inconvenient." My Uncle Robert tried to interject. Something about protecting the family's interests, about strangers not deserving what we'd earned. I cut him off. "She's not a stranger. She's family. Grandma decided that 4 years ago, and it's not our place to undecide it now that she's not here to defend it herself." I stood up, walked around the table, and did something that surprised everyone in that room, including myself. I reached out and shook Denise Coyle's hand. "I'm sorry it took this long," I told her. "And I'm sorry it happened like this. But I'd like to know my aunt, if you're willing." Denise's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time since she'd walked through that door, her shoulders relaxed. In the months that followed, the estate was settled exactly the way Grandma Ellie had wanted it, split 4 ways, fair and final. My mother and Uncle Robert dropped their challenge once it became clear that even the attorney found their claims baseless, and once it became clear that I would testify, if needed, to exactly what I'd witnessed in that office. Our relationship has been distant since, cordial at holidays, nothing more. Some bridges, once you watch someone try to burn them down over money, don't rebuild easily. I've made my peace with that. Denise and I, on the other hand, talk every week now. She came to Charleston last spring, and I took her to the house on Rutledge Avenue, showed her the porch where Grandma grew her silk plants, told her every story I could remember. She cried in that house for almost an hour. Then she laughed, wiped her eyes, and said Grandma's pecan pie recipe, the one she'd mailed her 2 years before she died, was still the best thing she'd ever tasted. I think about what my grandmother must have carried for 30 years, the quiet grief of a decision she didn't get to make on her own, and the courage it took to try and fix it. Even at 83, even knowing some of the people she loved most might not forgive her for it. She ran out of time to say it herself, so I said it for her, in that lawyer's office, in the only way I knew how. Family isn't always the people who share your last name. Sometimes it's the person willing to stand up when everyone else in the room chooses money over the truth. If you were in my seat that day, would you have shaken that stranger's hand or fought to keep her out? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more real stories of family, justice, and the truth that always finds its way out.